Anne Marie Battistone. This is Norfolk Public Access. This is state and local. My guest today is another gentleman from River's Edge, and he has some concerns about the town. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, and then he has some concerns that he'd like to share, and so I'm very pleased to have him. That would be Tony Centore. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming.
For the Italian interpretation of my name.
How do you pronounce it?
Centore.
Oh, okay. Now, you're from Medfield originally.
I lived in Medfield for 50 years.
Oh, you did? Whereabouts? What street?
On Long Meadow Road.
Oh, I loved living in Medfield. I loved it.
Yeah. Our first and only house. Lived there for 50 years. Still active in the Lions in Medfield and the Legion in Medfield.
And what brought you to Medfield? I mean, to Norfolk, rather.
To Norfolk. Well,
sorry.
I was concerned about housing, senior housing in Medfield.
Oh.
And the 40B housing, and I finally complained long enough that the town said, well, why don't we have a committee? And I said, that's a good idea, a town meeting. And then they said, well, we need to find somebody to be the chair of the committee. And they kind of looked at me and said, well, and I said, okay, I'll do it. So I was the chair of the Medfield Senior Housing Study Committee. So we looked at demographics, we looked at the number of seniors in town and the incomes of seniors, the home values of seniors, and then what was available to seniors in Medfield. And it was not very informative. There wasn't anything that you could move into. A lot of the housing that was done on the 40B were condominiums. They were very high priced.
Really?
They were like 800 and up, and most seniors like me that had lived in town for many years, their houses were worth maybe 500 at the most. So there was no way they were going to sell their house for 500 and move into a condo at 8. And
now I know there's a group of little brick houses not down near the high school. Is that senior housing or is it not?
Is it on Route 27?
No, there's a side street that you go and you connect up with one of them.
Those are affordable housing, low-income housing.
Oh, I see.
Tilden Village. And it's a bad situation for seniors. And the other troubling issue is that anybody can apply to buy one of the units. And the ones that are set aside for low income, there may only be like 10% of the total housing stock in that development.
Really?
And you could be competing with people from all over the place. And lots of times you have to go into a lottery. So if you live in town, those kind of projects don't affect Medfield seniors. They're not very helpful.
So they don't take Medfield seniors first?
No, it's against state law.
Oh, right. That's right.
But you would think that if somebody's been in town paying taxes all these years, been a good citizen, they might make, but they can't.
Huh.
So anybody could come from any other town. A lot of people came from Wellesley. They had big houses. They sold them. They had plenty of money. They could go in and buy a condo for $800.
Well, just clarify for me, like other than say a place like River's Edge, where I imagine most people are paying market rates, and the lower income developments. I mean, a lot of seniors. So you're saying there's seniors that fall in between the two of not being able to pay $400,000 or $500,000, but don't qualify for the low income.
Their income might qualify them. That's another issue. But I mean, the income might qualify them to. It's like $60,000 for a married couple for income. So they may be qualified to apply. But the thing is that the stock is limited. There's maybe 3 units in a 15-unit housing project. Well, you can imagine how many people will submit an application and say, I'd like to buy one of these units. They'll say, fine, we're going to have a lottery. Then it's a...
So these are seniors that have decided to sell their house, and
if they want to, they can sell their house.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have enough money to buy one of these units. So that's where the disconnect is.
So I mean, the reason I didn't stay in Medfield is that the houses were so expensive, and I would think that you'd be a decent house in Medfield would go from more than here. I think the prices there are about 20% higher.
Not so much, I don't think. Not if you have an older house.
So I know people want to be there for the schools and the town.
Are very good. The schools are very good. So when I did the study, chair, I knew one of the residents at River's Edge. I used to be in a Tai Chi class with her, and we talked about it. And she said, "You should come over and see my unit at River's Edge." And I went over and looked at it, and I brought the committee with me. We all went over there on a Saturday morning. And we looked at her unit, and I said, "Wow, this is what I like. One level. It's in a nice community. They've got a community building." The construction was very good. The guy who is the developer, Tom DePlacido, did a great job in constructing those, and they were reasonably priced.
What is the price range over there?
They're in the mid-5s to 600. I think there's one on sale now, which is a 3-level up and down, which is like 587. But they'd only come on the market infrequently. And,
right.
And the issue that I had was that I had to get my house ready to sell. I had to take down the wallpaper, do all the painting, get new appliances, do all of that stuff. Then I had to put my house on the market. Then I had to wait for a house to open up in Norfolk at River's Edge. And luckily, it kind of worked together. And
that's good.
I had St. Joseph working for me. You know that story?
I certainly do.
St. Joseph worked for me.
I often call out to St. Joseph.
Yeah.
So, what have been your concerns about what
Well, let me say about
here?
what I like about town.
Okay.
And I like it because it's a nice small town. It's quiet. A lot of things that I'm learning about Norfolk and the area around here, because I was kind of the Natick, Framingham. That's the way I went from Medfield. Now I'm here and I'm going south to Foxborough.
Were you born in Natick?
No. But I mean, those are the stores I used to go to.
Oh,
Framingham
I see.
Mall,
Yes,
Natick
right.
Mall, up
Right,
in there.
right,
Now,
up 27.
Now I'm being accustomed to things that are in Foxborough and Franklin and Dean Junior College. And I've started to now use stores here. You know, I'm used to having my laundry dry cleaned over in Medfield, and I said, wait a minute, let me look around here. And I found one up the street, and I went in there, and I said, okay, package store next door, I'll use them. So I'm trying to shop local.
It's very convenient for you all up there. I mean, since they put in all those.
And I was looking at the pizza place next door. I've got his menu, so I'm going to take advantage of it. We had some of that at the polls when I was working. So I think a nice town. I like the library, the beautiful library.
Have you found books that you like?
Yeah,
I've had trouble. I usually cannot find what I want there, and I have to use the system.
I look online to see what books are new or on subjects. Like recently, I read about Margaret Thatcher, which I never really got into her, but I read a biography. It was very interesting. And I'm also heading up a book club.
Oh.
Out of Medfield, which is for senior men's book club.
Oh. Huh. So, I know I saw you at the school budget meeting, and I was curious because I didn't know whether you pointed out a typo. You said something. You said it's not this, it's that, and I didn't understand. I didn't hear you.
Yeah, it was. It was a typo. It said that the average student in Norfolk schools, they cost $1 million less than the typical state average per student. And it should have been 1,000.
You think they would have caught that?
It's like the mayor, Bloomberg, had spent $500 million, and somebody was saying, well, there's 367 million Americans, that's $1 million each and change. And then someone said, wait a minute, it's only $1,000.
Well, but Joe Biden thinks that half this population of the United States has already been killed by gunfire.
You're late. Anyway, so I like the green space in town, Stony Brook Reservation. We've been there a couple of times when the weather was warm. It's beautiful. I think that also the people in Town Hall are very responsive. I like that. And the things that kind of concern me is, and I noticed that you probably have, is that a lot of people don't take part in the meetings that take place in Town Hall for the different, and I don't know whether it's just out of laziness or they just feel that it's a waste of time. They're not going to get anything changed.
Well, I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
And I think those probably the two main factors.
Nothing's going to change. But I think if people get there and make their point made and speak up, because they do give you an opportunity to have your 2 cents worth and to speak up. At the meeting last week was on the school committee budget. And one of the things that which is a great deal, which is the website that they have for the town departments. And they can give you meeting announcements, they can give you agendas.
They must have that in Medfield.
They do, but I just think that one in Norfolk was better.
Oh, really?
Anyway, so it's very helpful.
I think it's changed recently.
If you're interested in a particular department, like I'm not interested in the public works department or particularly, but I mean the schools, which is a big part of the budget of the schools. Anyway, the meeting was last Tuesday, and a big contingent of residents, and I think most of them probably were school teachers. But anyway, there were a couple of things. I commended them because part of the budget that they presented was places where they had cut costs, where they had not going to spend certain articles, and they had listed them all up, and they added up to over $500,000. And I commended the superintendent. I said, that's the kind of thinking I like to see, is that someone goes through the budget and say, okay, what can be eliminated? Not what can we keep, what can we add to, what can be eliminated. And I commended the school committee, on showing that they can cut the budget where it's required, where it's really unnecessary spending. So I did that. And then they went through the whole presentation, and I got at the end, and I said, you forgot something. And I said, you didn't talk about the students. How was the academic performance of the students? Yeah. They get up. And she actually talked to me after the meeting and said, thank you for bringing that up. I said, yeah, I guess you can get caught up with the money and the budgets and the business like that.
Well, speaking of students, what I thought was a bit much was the return on investment, and they're showing a video of the kids. Well, I think it would have been more interesting for them to have been following those kids and see how they did at the high school. Where did they go to college? Just to show a video of them. I mean, I thought it was a
clever. It was clever, and but you really want to know, how are the kids doing in school?
How do they do after they finish here too?
Yeah, I agree, and I'm sure that they've got all good teachers here, so I'm sure that there are a lot of kids that are doing well, and etc. But it's and the other thing that this relates to that same meeting. You probably know that the budgets by department have been available online. Remember, they had that Saturday meeting, and you could look at the budgets that they had for the current year and then what they're projecting next year.
Well, if they get the 3% or their 2.8%.
Yeah, that's another
And then they were supposed to have also done it based on zero.
Yeah, okay, let me back up a little bit. This is the meeting announcement, and they said that the budgets would be available for review on the 2nd and 3rd of March. I think the 3rd was the voting day. I don't know. And I thought the school was closed on the voting day.
No, it
wasn't. Anyway, but I found out that I couldn't see it. It wasn't available. And I talked to some of the selectmen, and I said, is something wrong? And they said, well, they haven't got it quite ready yet. But I felt, why? The biggest part of the budget in town is the schools, and you have to you can only go and look at it. Probably have to wear gloves that you can, not fool around with it.
Well, it's not online yet?
I haven't seen it. A line item by line item, not a breakdown by this, that, and the other, which I think is what she presented. But
I know at that February 8th meeting, it was, there was a lot of information. You were there. There was a lot of information up on the screen, but I don't think any of them want to do a line item presentation, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, maybe they're hesitant to do it because it'll show a lot of things. But
exactly.
But you have to look at the line items. And I read a book recently about, the title was "The Schools That Do Too Much," and it was talking about how schools all of a sudden they get into sports programs. And I'm not saying these are bad, but these are things that, to me, the primary focus of the school is in classroom.
I agree with you.
Teaching and learning in the classroom.
I was a teacher for 34 years.
Well, so you know, and things like pep rallies, things like selling
parties,
popcorn, birthday parties, pizza parties, all those other kind of things are not the main focus of the schools, and they ought to be looked at and say, do we really need to have
I couldn't agree with you more.
Selling popcorn and magazines.
Well, I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, and I think, I don't know whether it's that teachers want to be liked, or the headmasters want the parents to like them, but it seems to go in that direction as a way of placating. And I think the more distracted these kids have become with the computers and so forth, the less they can sit down and concentrate on just about anything. And you've got to have all these little activities for them. Mm-hmm. But just before I forget, I wanted to just mention something about the budget. I mean, when you compare what is spent on students in Norfolk compared to statewide, well, you have Boston, you have Springfield, you have Worcester, you have Chelsea, you have Lynn, you have all these places with tremendous problems, where they're, dealing with kids with need real remediation. So that's the kind of, and then I know they also had a page with comparable schools.
Well, I found even in Medfield, when the school committee, and they're trying to protect their turf, but they pick and choose things that'll put their school in the best light. And I mentioned it at the meeting. I said, you had a listing, and you said that in the last 14 years, the average increase in the school budget was 2.5%. Yet on another page, they had a listing of increases in the last 7 years, and they were all like 4%. And I mentioned to her, I said, I mean, you must have selectively picked the range so that it comes out 2.5%. And I said, I was in the sales business and marketing, and I know that you can play these kind of games, but I mean, the recent past, you've had 4+, I think the average was 4.2% increases every year. And
really?
Yeah. It gets.
And I don't think there can be anything done about it, because everybody will raise hell. And get hysterical.
I know the schools are important, and I know teachers do a lot of good work.
And they're also they're independent, I believe, too. Their budget is independent of the town budget in some way.
Well, a lot of their budget
is
fixed by contract negotiations.
That's true too.
And most of the school budget is salaries.
Right.
And you have like lanes, and you have advanced degrees, and which you kind of fixed. You can't do much.
Well, and if they had a larger class size, they'd need less space and fewer teachers.
Yeah, that's something that should be
21,
thought about.
I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, I am 20, 23, 24. I mean, I don't think that's going to ruin anybody's.
You could always get an aide to help a teacher in a classroom if she has to do 25 first graders.
Exactly.
You can get an aide who's not going to get a lot of money, but they can help get order in the classroom. And they're talking about an addition to the school, which is how many millions of dollars. So these are the questions that the school has to answer, the school committee and the school department. Well,
in a way, I mean, I don't know if they really do. I mean, they're sort of on their own. I'm not explaining it right, I know, but they're sort of in charge of their own issues over there. I mean, they sort of
kingdom. It's a big budget, and it's important to a lot of people. A lot of people who have kids in school, that's what they count on the town for: educating their kids, helping them get into college, giving them a good foundation. I mean, when I was my kids were young, I was interested in it. I wanted to have the kids in the band, and I wanted them doing this and doing that, so that when they applied for college, at least they had a good...
Well, in high school, I think that should be more important in high school, because you're right, you're getting your applications ready. Now, your children went through the Medfield schools?
Yeah.
And what are they doing now?
My daughter's in Chicago. She's a nurse, physician's assistant, She works in an oncology office, and my son lives in Revere, and he works for a technology company that works with the Democratic Party.
In Revere, huh? Interesting.
He lives in Revere.
Yeah.
He works in Somerville.
Okay, interesting.
But they do a lot of work for the Democrat National Committee and for different candidates.
Like polling or?
Electronic stuff, computer stuff. You won't tell me all the details. I might give it to somebody. But anyway, so the one of the things that did happen, though, I was looking through some information online, and I came across a letter from the town of Swampscott.
Oh, yes. That was you that...
That was me. Anyway, when I read this letter, it was from the town manager. It was for last year, but it was a letter to the town, and he went through a lot of the information about how the town budget was prepared.
No, that was online.
The letter was.
Yeah.
It was in front of a 100-page document for their budget. I mean, all of these town budgets, I hesitate to print because they're 100 pages.
Well, sure.
But one of the things that I thought was interesting was that he talked about a 2% increase across the board. While when I was listening to Norfolk, they said they wanted to have 2.5% plus 5% from fees. The 2.5% would be something that you could have under the 2.5 override business. And I always felt that they were making the cause for 3% by saying, well, we can go up to 2.5, and then we'll add another half with fees, we can get to 3%. But they never really, in my mind, convinced me that 3% was the magic number, that they should be increasing all of these budgets. And I said, maybe some of the budgets ought to be decreased.
Well, absolutely. It's been going at 3% every year. It's just been added on.
This is what happens when you do incremental budgeting.
Exactly.
You take last year's budget,
yes.
You say, okay, let's add, what do you think?
And who wouldn't want
3%,
that?
And then there it is.
What department wouldn't want that?
Of course. It's wonderful.
And then you price people out of the town.
Well, what will happen is that the town will get a reputation as being very high in real estate taxes. So when you go to sell your house, people are going to say, I'm not sure about Norfolk. It's a cute little town. It's nice, but you seem to have budgets that go bananas.
Now, did you send that along to Kevin Calcutt?
I sent it to the select board, Kevin, Cece, and Chris Wider. And Chris and Kevin came back to me and said, yeah, the guy brought up a lot of good points about looking. I'd had the phrase. So the town's ongoing commitment to slowing tax increases and refocusing instead on increasing efficiencies in our town spending. So that's what I think the town needs. And
I agree.
If you were at the school committee meeting, there was a young lady that got up. I always say young because they're my
younger than
daughter's
us.
age, younger than me. A young lady got up and said, I hope that we're going to be using zero-based budgeting. And then the superintendent said, yes, we're using zero-based budgeting. And she said, I never really understood what zero-based budgeting was. And I thought it was, you start with your budget, we start with a 0% increase. And you look at it, can you go to 1%? Can you get by? Can you go to 2%?
That's right.
She said, my husband straightened me out. That's not what it is.
Oh.
Zero-based budgeting is where you look at every line item. You start from zero, no money. And like the police department, you would start with, okay, I have to have so many patrolmen out in the daytime and so many patrolmen out at night. I have to have vehicles, I have to have equipment, I have to have all of this stuff. And I need to have extra or auxiliary policemen that help out. And you could put them in there, how many do you need? And then you price it out, what do they get per rate? And then you develop a budget from scratch.
But then that also allows you to say, well, I've got to have this, and I've got to have that, and because it's going up wasn't it 4.4%? Did they actually do it? They actually tried to do a zero-based budget? I didn't think that was actually done.
They didn't, because it's not easy. Zero-based budgeting is difficult. It takes effort. They almost have to get a consultant to come in and hold their hand and walk them through it. But what happens if you don't do that, and if you use this incremental budget, you may have a lot of inefficiencies in the budget.
Absolutely.
But they stay buried, and they're in there.
That's right.
And the manager will say, I know I'm
exactly
going to
right.
never need to spend all that money, but I want to have a little cushion.
Exactly.
Because then I might need it. Well, and the same thing applies when they talk about cash reserves or surplus at the end of the year. And somebody mentioned to me is if you have a budget, there shouldn't be any reason why you're going to come back, unless it's extraordinary, come back and say, well, I need another $500,000 from my budget. Because you know a lot of things. They know what the salaries are going to be. They know what the cost of gasoline is. They know, that's another thing. In the police department, someone said they have so many vehicles.
A lot of them.
A lot of vehicles, more vehicles than they have policemen. And then they're the old style, American cars. They're not the old Toyotas that the other departments are using, the smaller compressed ones. These are the old sedans.
They don't have the GPS in most of them.
I don't know. I never was arrested.
Well, but the GPS is so that the town can know if somebody's driving all around in the car. If it's hooked up so that you can then go in there.
What the policeman's doing.
Where they're going, right.
Yeah.
And when.
Well, these are the things that go on. It's not easy. I don't relish the job of the selectmen
and all this new
administrator.
housing. I mean, if people come in to look at these houses that are coming in that are so expensive, I mean, naturally they're going to, if they have any sense, they'll check the tax rate. And actually, I think our rate is higher than Medfield, which I find astonishing because you have that lovely center. It's been so well planned, and there were so many amenities in Medfield that I think are lacking here.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
listen.
a nice town.
Well, thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
And,
I hope to see you at the meetings.
Oh, I'm going to go. I'll be there. I'll be at the. I always go to the selectmen's meeting, and the ZBA is my favorites. Thank you for watching State and Local. My guest was Tony Centore, or Centore in English, who lives at River's Edge, and he was talking about some of his concerns and his opinions and views of Norfolk. So I'll look forward to seeing you next time. We're going to have somebody else coming on pretty soon, and we'd be happy to have you watch us. And thanks for watching today. I'm Anne Marie Battistone. This is Norfolk Public Access.